My name is Alana Rivera. I was 23 when I got kicked out of my parents' house for being pregnant. No drugs, no crime, no shameful scandal, just 2 pink lines on a test I took in secret, shaking in the bathroom of my college dorm. I had always followed the rules. Honor student, church, choir, volunteer tutor, the kind of daughter who never got caught doing anything wrong, mostly because I never did anything wrong. Except, in their eyes, I had now committed the ultimate sin. I remember the night I told them. My hands were trembling as I held the ultrasound photo. My mother was sitting at the kitchen island, sipping tea, and my father, eyes glued to the news. I cleared my throat and said softly, "I need to tell you something." I showed them the picture. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. My mom set down her cup slowly, carefully, like she didn't want to spill it, or maybe like she was holding back from throwing it. My dad stood up and walked out of the room. When he came back, he held a duffel bag. "Pack your things," he said. "Dad, you don't live here anymore." I was stunned. "You're serious?" "We raised you better than this," my mother said, voice ice cold. "You made your choice. Now live with it." No conversation, no tears, just exile. I spent that night on a friend's couch, holding my stomach and wondering what kind of world I'd just been thrown into. I was 23, unmarried, broke, pregnant, and suddenly, invisible. College friends stopped calling. Church people sent me messages that started with "praying for you" and ended with judgmental Bible verses. The father of the baby, long gone, disappeared the moment I said the word pregnant. There were moments I wanted to give up. But then came her heartbeat. I heard it during my second ultrasound, a steady rhythm like a tiny drum inside me saying, "You're not done yet." That night, I made a vow. If no one wanted to stand by me, I'd build something where every woman like me had someone to stand with. I didn't know how, but I would find a way. 2 weeks after getting kicked out, I found myself folding children's clothes at a second-hand store downtown. The sign outside read, "Little Sprouts, gently used, fiercely loved." It paid minimum wage. But it was the only place that didn't flinch when I told them I was pregnant. The owner, Denise, a blunt, tired woman in her 50s, just looked me up and down and said, "You'll be useful once your feet stop swelling." Not exactly a warm welcome, but at least it was real. The store wasn't glamorous, the lights flickered, the back room smelled like old carpet and diaper cream, but I learned things there that no degree or Bible study ever taught me. I learned that most single moms don't complain because they can't afford the luxury of breaking down. I learned that mothers will barter shoes for formula and skip lunch so their toddlers can eat. And I learned that women like me weren't rare. We were everywhere, invisible, judged, exhausted, and underestimated. There was Jamie, a 19-year-old who worked 2 jobs and still pumped breast milk in the store bathroom between shifts. Tina, a soft-spoken woman with 3 kids and a GED who somehow made $60 stretch across an entire week. And me, Alana, the good girl gone bad, who now spent nights curled up on a thrift store cot in the back room because I couldn't afford rent and food. But I wasn't ashamed. Because slowly, through that struggle, I saw a gap the world had ignored. No one was creating opportunities for women like us. Only pity. Only lectures. Only survival. So I started taking notes. Every mom who came through that store had a story, a hustle, a hidden strength. And one night when the store was dark and I was alone with my swollen ankles and half a peanut butter sandwich, I pulled out an old notebook and wrote one sentence across the top. What if we didn't just survive? Below it, I began sketching something bold. A business, run by single moms, for single moms. With flexible hours, on-site childcare, and fair wages. It sounded impossible. But then again, so did surviving this far. I waited 3 days before showing Denise my notebook. 3 days of folding donated onesies and organizing clearance bins while my ankles ached and my belly grew heavier. 3 days of building up the courage to share something that wasn't just a dream, it was all I had left. During our lunch break, Denise sat on a crate in the stockroom eating instant noodles straight from the styrofoam cup. "Can I show you something?" I asked. She grunted. "As long as it doesn't require walking." I handed her the notebook. Inside were my scribbled ideas for a retail store selling maternity and baby items staffed entirely by single moms. Free on-site daycare for employees. A mentorship program pairing struggling young mothers with older moms. Revenue sharing and emergency housing support from future profits. Denise flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable. Then she snorted. "Cute," she said, "and wildly unrealistic." My heart sank. Why? She jabbed the notebook with a chopstick. "Because no one gives women like us capital. Because landlords don't care if you have a dream. And because half the world still thinks single moms are lazy mistakes instead of warriors in sweatpants." But what if we proved them wrong? Denise looked at me, really looked at me. Then she said, "You're idealistic. That's not a bad thing. But idealism doesn't pay rent." I nodded, trying not to let the rejection show. But deep inside, something cracked, not from her words, but from the truth in them. Later that week, tragedy struck. Jamie, the 19-year-old I'd grown close with, came in crying. Her landlord had evicted her for excess noise. She and her baby were sleeping in her car. I tried to give her my cot in the back, but Denise shut it down. "Liability," she said. That night, I went home not to an apartment, but to the storage room again, and cried harder than I had in months. I wasn't angry at Denise. I was angry at the system. At a world that punished women for being poor and punished them again for being mothers. The next morning, I found Jamie sitting on the curb with her baby and her suitcase. I didn't hesitate. I handed her my notebook. She flipped through it. "You really want to build this?" she asked. "No," I said. "We are going to build it." She smiled through tears. "Where do we start?" I pointed down the street. "With a lemonade stand, a garage sale, a GoFundMe, whatever we've got, because no one's coming to save us. We save each other." We started with nothing but a folding table, 2 cardboard signs, and a dream that no one took seriously. Jamie and I gathered donated baby clothes from moms at the thrift store. We washed, sorted, and priced them carefully. Then, every weekend, we set up in the corner of Maple and 3rd, a busy intersection just outside the Sunday Farmers Market. Our sign read, "Single Moms Rising Gently Used Baby Goods. Pay what you can." Some people smiled politely and walked past. Others looked uncomfortable. A few dropped off old strollers, formula cans, and even diapers. By the second weekend, word had spread. We weren't just selling, we were serving. Moms who couldn't afford basic supplies came with tears in their eyes. We gave what we could, and sometimes they gave back. A blanket, a hug, a thank you note written in crayon. Jamie started documenting everything on TikTok. At first, just small clips, folding clothes, chatting with other moms, showing our $13 earnings for the day. But one post changed everything. It was a video of me handing a diaper bag to a teary-eyed teenage mom. The caption read, "No one helped us, so we're helping each other." #single mom empire, from nothing to something. Overnight, it got 200,000 views. By the end of the week, over 1 million. Suddenly, our DMs were flooded not with trolls, but mothers. From Atlanta, Chicago, Manila, Nairobi, women saying, "We need this in our city." I couldn't breathe. Then came the email. A local news anchor named Simone Taylor wanted to do a story. I froze when I read it. "This isn't real," I whispered. But it was. She came with a small camera crew and interviewed us under the same tree where we started. I wore the cleanest maternity top I owned and tried not to cry on camera. Jamie, holding her baby, said, "We're not just trying to sell clothes, we're trying to rebuild the world that turned its back on us." The segment aired 3 nights later. By the following morning, our GoFundMe hit $12,000. By the end of the week, $47,000. And just like that, people finally saw us. Not as charity cases and not as warnings, but but as builders. Mothers, entrepreneurs, fighters. The corner of Maple and 3rd would never look the same again. 3 weeks after the news segment aired, we had nearly $78,000 in donations. People sent messages with every dollar. This helped me during my lowest. I wish something like this existed when I was a single mom. I don't have much, but I believe in what you're building. It didn't feel real, not yet. But the numbers were there, and so was the pressure. We started scouting spaces. Jamie wanted to stay close to the neighborhood where we first started. We found a small corner unit, formerly a laundromat, with peeling blue paint, rusted pipes, and a leaky roof. It was perfect. A mess, yes, but it was ours, or it could be. I stared at the lease for 2 hours one night. I hadn't signed my name to anything in months, not since that ultrasound appointment. Are we really doing this? Jamie asked, her baby asleep against her chest. If we don't, I said. Who will? I signed. We cried. The next morning, we posted a picture of the keys. The caption, "We got a building. Let's build a future." The likes exploded. But that wasn't the most surprising message I got that day. An email came through at 2:03 a.m. from d.rivera.home@gmail.com. Subject, just saw the story. I froze. It was from my mother. I hadn't heard from her in over 6 months. No birthday call, no message when the baby was born, no apology. Just this. I saw the story on Channel 8. I didn't know it had gotten so big. I don't agree with the choices you made, but I never wanted this kind of life for you. I hope you know that. Mom. No, I'm sorry. No, how are you? No mention of my daughter, not even her name. Just distance, dignified coldness wrapped in polite punctuation. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I did. Too much. That night, I held my daughter, Lucia, close to my chest. She was 3 months old, warm, perfect, full of soft sounds and clenched fists. I whispered to her, "You're not going to grow up begging anyone to see your worth." Then I grabbed a brush, painted over the cracked front wall of our new space, and wrote in bold white letters, "Knoll, the mothership, by single moms, for single moms." The dream was no longer an idea. It had a name now, and soon it would have a heartbeat of its own. Renovating the mothership was never going to be easy. The plumbing groaned like it had secrets. The walls peeled like they'd been holding in tears for decades, and every time we patched a crack, 3 more appeared. But none of that scared me. What did? The letter taped to our door just 3 weeks after we opened. Notice: cease all operations until proper business permits are approved. City of Brighton Licensing Department. I felt my stomach drop. I reread it 5 times, thinking maybe I missed something. We had a permit, or at least I thought we did. Denise had walked me through the online forms. I clicked every checkbox, paid every fee. But apparently, we'd skipped a line, or misfiled a form, or maybe, just maybe, someone didn't want us to succeed. A part of me feared it was deliberate. We were getting too much attention, too much momentum, and not everyone liked seeing single moms take up space. I called the city office the next morning. The woman on the line sounded exhausted. "Yes, Miss Rivera," she said. "You submitted the retail license, but your location used to be zoned as a laundromat. You need a variance for mixed use, especially if you're hosting events or offering childcare services." Childcare? You mean the playpen we set up in the back corner so moms can breastfeed and not trip over diaper bags? I asked, incredulous. "I'm just telling you what the report says." I hung up, fists clenched. This wasn't about legality. It was about control. We were doing something the system didn't know how to categorize, and instead of adapting, they were trying to shut us down. Jamie paced behind me. "So what do we do?" "We pivot," I said, "like mothers do, every single day." We moved the play area off-site to my friend's garage, started listing ourselves online as a community co-op instead of a business, anything to stay technically compliant while we fought the red tape. Then we did what no city form could stop. We threw a diaper drive. It wasn't just successful, it was historic. Hundreds showed up. Local restaurants donated snacks. Volunteers handed out free baby wipes, carriers, breast pumps, and formula. Single moms got haircuts, legal advice, and job leads. By the end of the day, we'd filled 2 storage rooms with supplies. And more importantly, filled something else too. Hope. The media returned. The headlines read, "Mothers building an empire one crisis at a time. The mothership refuses to sink." And I knew then, paperwork could slow us, but it couldn't stop us. We weren't just running a store anymore. We were running a movement. 3 months after the diaper drive, the mothership became a name people recognize not just in our city, but online, in forums, in small business podcasts, even in a feature on a national mom blog titled, "Alana Rivera is building what the government forgot." Then came the email that felt like a door cracking open. Subject, Partnership Proposal Harper Equity Fund. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But it wasn't. They were real, big, powerful. An assistant scheduled a video call with one of the senior partners, a woman named Clarissa Mendez, sharp suit, colder smile. She'd seen our story. She called it scrappy, viral, emotionally potent. "I'm prepared to offer a $250,000 investment," Clarissa said. "Your story is unique. The growth potential is there. But you need infrastructure. You need expansion. We can help you do that." I was stunned. That money could change everything. We could open a second location, hire full-time staff, buy real cribs instead of donated ones. Jamie squeezed my hand off camera. But then Clarissa added something else quietly. "Of course, with funding comes guidance. We'd want naming rights on future branches. And you'd have to phase out the child care angle. It's a liability for investors." I blinked. "You want us to stop helping moms while they're shopping?" Clarissa smiled like I'd misunderstood. "We want to professionalize the brand. Make it more scalable. Less messy. Less messy. Like motherhood was supposed to be clean. Like our struggle should fit into a slide deck." I told her I'd think about it. And I did. All night. I thought about how I used to breastfeed Lucia on milk crates, how Jamie cried when she had to choose between diapers and bus fare, how Tina came in one day just to use the bathroom and left with a bag of groceries. That wasn't messy. That was life. The next morning, I wrote Clarissa back. I thanked her. And I said no. Jamie stared at me like I'd grown wings. "You turned down $250,000. I turned down the idea that our value comes from being palatable. Because the mothership wasn't built for corporate boardrooms. It was built for every woman who ever changed a diaper with one hand and held herself together with the other." After turning down the Harper equity deal, we hit a financial wall. Fast. Rent was due. Our shelves were low, and every time a new mom walked in asking for help, I felt the weight of choosing between compassion and sustainability. Then came the city announcements. Brighton Urban Renewal Grant. A $100,000 grant for community-run businesses with proven social impact. It felt like fate. Jamie and I worked around the clock on the application, pulling data, testimonials, videos, photos. I even interviewed 5 mothers whose lives had changed through the mothership. Their stories were raw, brave, and undeniable. We submitted the packet 2 minutes before the deadline. A week later, we got the email. "You've been shortlisted as a finalist. Prepare to pitch live next Friday." We screamed. We cried. We celebrated with gas station cupcakes. But celebration faded fast when I saw the list of panel judges. One name sent my heart into my throat. Councilman Daniel Rivera. My father. The same man who packed my bags when I told him I was pregnant. The same man who hadn't called once since Lucia was born. Jamie's eyes widened when she saw the name. "Do you think he'll recuse himself?" I shook my head. "If I know him, he won't want to look weak." The night before the pitch, I couldn't sleep. I kept rehearsing, rewriting, rehearsing again. My words had to be perfect, clear, unshakable. Not just for the grant for me, The next morning, I walked into the city chamber, hair pulled back, baby food on my sleeve I hadn't noticed, and notes clutched in my sweaty hand. The room was filled with business hopefuls. A few of them nodded respectfully. One woman from a tech startup scoffed when I mentioned we were mom-run. "I didn't know charity counted as entrepreneurship," she muttered. I smiled. "We're not charity, we're a blueprint for survival." Then the panel entered. My father sat third from the left, still in his crisp suit, still looking like everything in his life was perfectly ordered. His eyes met mine briefly, then shifted away. He didn't acknowledge me. Didn't even flinch. When it was my turn to present, I took a deep breath and walked to the podium. I looked directly at him, not with anger, with resolve. And I began. I stood at the podium with my heart pounding like a war drum. The council chamber felt too big, too official. My thrifted blazer suddenly too tight, my palms damp with nerves, but behind the fear stood something stronger: truth. And truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. I cleared my throat. "My name is Alana Rivera. I'm the founder of The Mothership, a mom-run community business built from nothing but struggle, survival, and a dream." My voice didn't shake, not once. In this city, over 34% of single mothers live below the poverty line. But we're not just a statistic. We're workers, nurturers, business owners, and yet we're overlooked again and again. I glanced at my father. He didn't look up. I continued. "When I got pregnant at 23, I was kicked out of my home. I slept in a storage room. I worked minimum wage while trying to hide morning sickness. And I wasn't alone. I met moms who had it worse. Moms who built a life out of nothing. We didn't ask for handouts. We created something. A store, a sisterhood, a movement." I could feel the room start to shift. Eyes were locked in. No more whispers, just silence, the good kind. I opened my final slide. A photo of the mothership on its busiest day, mothers hugging, babies smiling, shelves full of donated goods, and above it all, our hand-painted sign. "This grant isn't about charity," I said. "It's an investment, and I promise you no other business on this list knows how to stretch a dollar, build a community, or rise from the dirt like a single mother who's been told she doesn't belong." And then, from the back row, a voice rang out. "She's right." Heads turned. It was Denise, my old boss from Little Sprouts. She hadn't told me she was coming. She stood and said loud and clear, "I watched this girl work until her feet swelled and her back gave out. She turned survival into strategy. I've never seen anything like it." The room burst into quiet applause. I looked again at my father. This time, he looked back. His jaw clenched, his eyes softened, but he said nothing. I left the stage with no idea how the vote would go. But I knew one thing for sure. I hadn't just delivered a pitch. I had reclaimed my voice. 3 days after the pitch, the email came through at 6:42 a.m. Subject: Brighton Urban Renewal, Grant Results. Body: Congratulations, Miss Rivera. The Mothership has been selected as the 2024 Community Empowerment Grant recipient. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just sat on the floor of our office and wept quiet, shaking sobs while Lucia slept in the carrier strapped to my chest. We'd done it. The money meant we could pay rent a year in advance, launch a food pantry, hire 3 of our volunteers full-time. It meant stability, something single mothers weren't supposed to have. The news spread like fire. Local news picked it up, mom bloggers shared it, strangers brought by strollers filled with diapers and hand-me-downs, and Denise, she showed up that same day with a lemon bundt cake and said, "Told you, you're a storm they can't stop." But amid the celebration, one envelope arrived, handwritten, "No return address." I knew that handwriting. I stood in the back of the mothership, heart thudding as I opened it. It was from my father. "Alana, I didn't vote in the final grant decision. I recused myself not because I was afraid of bias, but because I finally realized I was never neutral to your story. Watching you speak, I saw the daughter I refused to see 2 years ago, not the disappointment I imagined when you told us about your pregnancy, but a woman braver than I ever was. I've spent months justifying what I did, saying I was teaching you accountability. But the truth is, I acted out of fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of what people would say about my perfect little family unraveling. But now, I see, you didn't unravel. You rebuilt, stronger. I don't expect forgiveness, and I won't ask for a place in Lucia's life, but if, one day, there's a chance to be part of yours again, I'll be here. Dad. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I folded it, tucked it into the drawer labeled personal, and returned to the front where Jamie was teaching a new mom how to wrap a baby sling. Everything okay? She asked. I smiled. Yeah, just a ghost trying to learn how to walk again. I wasn't sure if I'd write back, but I was sure of this. I had become the woman I needed, not because the world allowed me to, but because I decided to. Success brings celebration, but it also brings shadows. 2 weeks after we won the grant, the mothership was everywhere in headlines, on social media, even on the cover of a parenting magazine under the title, "The Mom Who Built a Business Out of Being Broken." I hated that phrase. I wasn't broken. I was reborn. But just as quickly as the praise came, the backlash followed. It started with a thread on a local Facebook group. Why are we celebrating irresponsibility? Pregnancy outside marriage is not empowerment. This girl is just capitalizing on her mistakes. Then came the screenshots taken from my old college Twitter account, posts I barely remembered, jokes out of context, pictures from nights I didn't even drink at, but was tagged in anyway. A girl with eyeliner too thick and opinions too loud. And the worst part, an anonymous blog popped up. The truth about Alana Rivera. It accused me of faking hardship for attention, said I had wealthy parents, that the mothership was just a front to make money off guilt donations. It was slander, twisted, malicious, and strategic. But it was also working. Our donations slowed. A sponsor pulled out. Some volunteers backed away quietly. I sat in the break room one night, scrolling through the comments with tears stinging the corners of my eyes. Jamie walked in, holding her baby on one hip and a plate of leftover lasagna in the other. "You reading it again?" she asked. "I just wanted people to know what we're trying to do," I whispered. "Not this." She put the plate down and looked me dead in the eyes. "You didn't survive all that just to be quiet now." So I made a choice. We held a community event the next weekend, but this time, I didn't just speak about the mothership. I spoke about me. I told them about the eviction. About folding clothes at Little Sprouts. About breastfeeding on storage floors. About the time I almost gave up and the moment Lucia kicked and I realized I still had fight left. The video of that speech went viral overnight. Not polished, not pretty, just real. And in that rawness, the tide turned again. People rallied. Messages poured in. They tried to shame you, but you made us proud. We need more mothers like you, not fewer. You see, shame only works when we stay silent. But I wasn't that girl anymore. And I wasn't going back. 1 year. That's how long it had been since the mothership opened its first location. 12 months of secondhand shelves, free child care, diaper drives, pop-up health clinics, resume workshops, tearful hugs, and new beginnings. We weren't just a store anymore. We were a movement, a mirror, a place where single moms didn't have to shrink to survive. Lucia was now taking her first steps, both literal and symbolic. She toddled through the aisles, babbling, greeted by a sea of aunties who had once walked in terrified and now walked out employed, empowered, and unafraid. We were working on opening our second location across town. The walls were bare, but the vision was full. And then one day, someone knocked on the front door. It was strange no one really knocked anymore. We had an open door policy, a literal sign that read, "You belong here, just walk in." But the woman on the other side didn't know that. She stood nervously, holding a duffel bag and a baby carrier. I opened the door and smiled. Hi, she said, her voice shaky. I saw you on Instagram. I just left my boyfriend. I don't have anywhere to go. Behind her eyes, I saw me. Not the polished version, not the founder. The girl on a friend's couch, the one with swollen ankles and an eviction notice in her pocket. I held the door open. You're not alone anymore, I said. Come in. She stepped inside, eyes wide as if stepping into another world. And just like that, the circle began again. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the drawer labeled personal. Inside, my father's letter, still folded neatly, still unanswered. But beside it now sat something else, a new envelope. No words, just a photo. It was him holding Lucia, smiling. He'd stopped by last week, no fanfare, just quiet humility. He said, "If you'll let me, I'd like to start fresh. No lectures, just presence." We weren't there yet, but we were closer. And sometimes, healing doesn't happen in grand moments. Sometimes it starts in the spaces we build together, for the women no one saw, for the children they carried, and for the future they deserve to raise without shame, without fear, without having to knock ever again.